Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this recorded interview. Today, my guest is Byron Eddy, a 20-year core movement integration practitioner. Byron also holds 40 years of experience as a massage therapist. The purpose of today's interview is to better understand the benefits of core movement integration as it relates to stability, balance, and alignment to improve daily functional activities. Byron, thank you for doing this interview with me. And to start, please, can you introduce yourself, including your background, your specialty, and your hobbies?
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Vila. Yes, my name is Byron Eddy. I am a long-time massage therapist. I began that practice or began going to school in 1982 in Connecticut, USA, when there was nobody doing that kind of work, and the school was brand new. I was in the second graduating class from that school way back when. At the same time, I had begun a practice in the martial arts and yoga. And my practice in the martial arts is what actually led me to massage. We used to do at the end of class, would often do some shiatsu massage type moves with each other. And then a therapist opened a studio above the school, and I went to him for the first time and decided, oh, this is what I want to do. And there was no place. I would have to travel to either New York City or Boston, but then suddenly a school opened in Connecticut, and I went there, and that began my practice. By 1984, that's pretty much what I was doing full time, and that's what I've done my whole life. About 15 years into the practice, I was kind of breaking down in my body. It's hard work if you do it the way I was doing it. Mm-hmm. My back was hurting, my knees, my shoulders, everything was getting difficult. And I saw an advertisement for a weekend workshop in the Feldenkrais method with a man named Dr. Joseph Delagrati. And so I went for this weekend, and the weekend basically changed my pathway, changed my life. Simple ideas like doing less can sometimes have more achievement. And so I began to study with him in Boston. I still check in with him occasionally, but for a good 3 or 4 years, I was traveling pretty regularly to Boston to study with him and a group and to learn his method.
So you are core movement integration. Can we call it CMI? Is that the typical way to refer to it, or?
Yes, let's call it CMI. It's a much shorter term. It went through a couple. It was called core integration at first, then became core movement integration. There are, if you go on the internet, you will see other things around core integration and core strengthening, and sometimes those are exercise related, where this is more of a lifestyle.
But core movement integration is the real deal, right?
Yes.
This is the legitimate school or teachings that we are referring to.
Yes, absolutely.
And you are so certified in this practice.
Yes, after about 5 or 6 years of training with Joseph, I got certified as a core movement integration therapist, which entitles me to, or enables me to run classes in, group classes, and then also to work individuals through verbal teaching and direction, and also by hands-on. So it added to my massage therapy work
Mm-hmm.
in that it made me last longer. I'm still going strong, and it also gave me a way to help people who were struggling with various issues. So
I was going to ask you where you trained, but from what you said, I gathered that you were training in Boston and you still are doing, I guess, what we can call continuous training with him. Is that correct? Or
not so much anymore. Joseph is now he was 20 years older than me back then, and now he's 20 years old. He's in his 80s and doing very well. He teaches a lot in Italy. He spends time in Italy, so I have not yet been there, but he has quite a following in Italy. And then coming back to Boston, he also lives here in Florida, but he doesn't teach so much anymore. So so now I'm I can go to him, but I can also refer to there are lots of DVDs and lots of online stuff, plus there's the other students that I can check in with also.
so can you define core movement integration in your own words, and what is the purpose of core movement integration?
Okay. Well, core movement integration is a synthesis of the work of Moshe Feldenkrais and martial arts and yoga and general somatic body therapies. In my own words, it is learning how to move in a way that's much more efficient and much more core related, in that all movements that you make are going to move through the core of your body. And so learning these strategies or these movements, there are basic movements, six directions of movement in our body. I can run through the six. They are extension, flexion, rotation, and then lateral bending or side bending. So learning these movements, and then in the context of whatever activity that you're doing, whether it could be like I'm doing right now, which is sitting, or standing. I used to teach classes in walking and sitting when I was back in Connecticut. I'm not doing that so much in Florida, but I would like to get that going again. So, so for me, it's been a way of learning how to use my body more efficiently.
Efficiently, yeah.
Yeah, with less strain and stress on my body. I used to have, I had very bad knee problems that were more of a structural problem, that after a few years of studying with Joseph, that pretty much resolved. I don't have the injuries that I used to get with my knees fairly regularly. The lower back pain I used to have always, I never have lower back pain anymore. And it's all because of just simple movements.
Right. It was what I was going to ask you. Did you see in yourself the results from adopting those techniques? But it sounds like you did. Like your knee pain gone and your back pain is gone just by adopting those techniques.
Yes.
When you refer to those 6 movement principles, I think you said, and based on my research on this subject, I saw that they refer as the 6 pathways of sequential movement.
Yes.
Is that the same thing that you were referring to?
Yes, there are basically 6 pathways of movement in the body. And Joseph's first book is called Lessons from Within. And so you're learning how to embody those movements. We become separated from these movements through too much sitting or improper exercise patterns or movement patterns, that sort of.
Yes, I keep thinking, you've told me before, just for the walking, I think we all have a tendency to throw our leg forward to move instead of
Yeah.
move our hip to start the walking movement. I think
Yeah,
you've told me in the past that the walking starts in the hip and not just by throwing our legs like that.
right. Like simple,
Simple things.
simple things like that. Like, can I talk about walking for?
Yeah, please talk about walking. Everybody's walking, so I think it's of interest of everybody.
The classes that I run are called Walking with Ease and Power. So that sounds kind of opposite of each other, but how it works out is that if you go somewhere where you can watch a lot of people walk, you will see so many different patterns of walking. And in general, I see oftentimes people dropping into one side of their hip. There's kind of a clunk clunk kind of walk, bump 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 bump, rather than a smooth transition of weight from the left hip to the right hip, from the left foot to the right foot. There ought to be a smooth movement, and then that movement then travels through the body. It's the reason that there's such a chronic problem with knees and hips, is the way people are moving and not aware of how it could improve. Like, for instance, these walking classes, people would come in and say, I know how to walk. I mean, that's silly. But you can always improve things. And why not? Sure, you've been walking since you were little, but a lot of times those patterns that you develop are from observing your caregivers, and oftentimes their movements are dysfunctional. So you embody that. So this is the first thing that somebody needs, is to be curious about movement and about being able to change that. So curiosity is, because for a lot of people, they're no big deal. They'll just go exercise, or they'll just go continue on their way. But when you begin to find that you can, if you have problems going on, like I did myself, then you become curious, because you're like, okay, I don't want to go through life with these knee problems. The knee problem that I had, I've met people who had the same condition, and pretty much they don't do anything. They sit and they're in total fear of this problem. For me, it was like I had to find a way out. So one of the famous Moshe Feldenkrais sayings is, if you know what you're doing, you can do what you want. So people who were, so like for walking, for instance, nobody really knows what they're doing when they're walking. Nobody maybe understands that if you want to take a step forward with your left foot, for instance, you can do that. You can just thrust the foot forward, or you can move the right hip slightly back, and that brings the left side forward, like I'm doing right here, right now. It's just
Yeah, I
I'm sitting.
see you, and I don't think I walk properly, really. I think I have an okay posture, but I don't
Yeah,
think I engaged the walking like you're showing,
Yeah.
from the shoulder.
And it's simple, but it takes some practice. And then, once you get it, it's and then the rest of the body follows, the head follows. It's it can be a great experience then, and you can go faster and not necessarily farther. I hear people all the time. Somebody was in massage, here a couple days ago, in for a massage, and they said that they used to walk 5 or 6 miles a day, and I think, my God, that's an awful long ways to be walking. It would be better to do a mile or two and do it with core movement integration and go quicker, faster. There have been studies done. I think there's a Swedish study that talks about the speed of your walk determines your longevity more than, So I see people out walking and they're just like they're not going very fast at all. They're just kind of dragging along, and they're really not getting much out of that except being outdoors and maybe taking some deep breaths.
Yeah,
But
if I can say, I know it's very popular these days to get your 10,000 steps in, or those little record to keep you active. But yeah, if you don't do it correctly, it might not really bring you the benefits that you were looking for, and potentially do more damage, I suppose, if not engaging properly. I wanted to mention, when you ask, you can observe people walking. I see people walking, but what catch even more my eyes are people running.
Yeah.
Sometimes how they run, like hinge forward, the dragging, I can't even describe it.
Well, they often are grimacing in their face, and they look like they're in pain to me. They don't look like they're enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
It's rare to see somebody running with a smile on their face.
That's true. I'm not a runner. I cannot really talk too much about it, but I think I can say, or I can see when the posture is not quite there. There's the effort, but something is off, so we can for sure see.
So if we look at running, for instance, in core movement integration, humans are unique in that we can line up on one side of our body. We can line up on one leg and turn to the left, and we can turn to the right. Other species can't do that. By learning how to do that, that's how people began to get good at barefoot running. That became popular a few years back, because the transition of weight is so instantaneous and so light. It's just so fluid and smooth that there's no pounding on the joints. So, and it's the same for walking. When I walk very fast, but I don't take big steps. I've been walking with people, and they'll say, "Oh, you got long legs and stuff," but I don't take long steps. I take short steps. They're just quick and efficient, and they travel through the body, so one leads to the other. You can't move forward without moving back. That's kind of how that's kind of how I look at it. If you're going to step forward on the left, then the right has to go back a little bit, and that powers the next step, and it goes back and forth like that.
Yeah, I think the way you describe it is very clear and simple, while not easy to grasp at first. It probably does require the practice and the curiosity, like you mentioned.
So there are a lot of Feldenkrais had what he called ATMs, which is awareness through movement lessons. Okay. So in core movement integration, there are movement lessons also. So just, I can tell you, I can have you stand up and say, okay, do this with your body, but you're not going to embody it unless you go through the steps. A lot of the work, a lot of the classes begin with you lying on the floor on your back. That's where it begins, and sometimes it just begins with breathing, and then becoming aware of, you know, where your hips are and how they move, and that sort of direction. So you may lay on the ground with your one position is called the standing position. Is you're lying on your back, which sounds silly, but put your feet flat on the floor, your knees are up, you have all the ground force reaction that you would have if you were standing up. So if you push on your right foot, it's going to move through your body the similar way as if you were standing. So from that position, without having gravity to deal with, you can begin to understand, you know, like where these movements, you know, when I go this way, you know, where does that movement move through in your body? That's
it starts to bring the awareness as you have the floor supporting you to see all the touching points, that they all move together. Or at least it's how I visualize it.
yeah. And also when you break it down, when you lay on the floor, whether you're laying on your side or laying on your back or on your front, you begin to also to find where you're efforting too much or efforting where you don't need to effort. In massage therapy, oftentimes, you know, I'll be working with somebody and I can say, you know, let that go a little more, and they do, and they're so often surprised that, you know, like, oh, I didn't realize that, you know, I was doing that. And that becomes, when I was first studying the core movement integration, what I loved so much was all the aha moments. This like this discovery of like, oh, okay, when I do this with my hip, it goes all the way through. I can effort, I can make, I can strain and struggle and strain. It just became perfect for me, for my life, for
Yeah,
you
it
know,
makes
that you don't have to work so hard at stuff. That it's you know, to do less can be more.
it makes total sense for you, particularly as a massage therapist, to not have to put so much effort when you could do more with less effort.
Yeah.
It makes complete sense.
In my early days of doing massage, boy, my wrists would hurt. I used to sweat, you know, sweat working on people. I don't sweat anymore at all, and I'm able to work, you know, more efficiently with less effort, you know. And so, to me, that's what life can be about, and especially as one ages, it should be about. You know, the younger part of our species, you know, they can do all this efforting and all that, but it comes to a point where as you get older, you have to learn to be more efficient or and do better, or else you're going to have things that are going to break down. And we have this
Yes.
huge hip replacement, knee replacements, shoulder replacements, all
Oh
this
yeah, we've
going on.
all heard about those. I think we covered a lot so far as what core movement integration do, and it applies to everyone and everyone that is walking or even breathing. But I
Yeah.
have in my questions to, you know, really cover everything, and one of them was, what are the primary benefits for core movement integration and for overall physical health and well-being? Do you think there is something we can add to that? The primary benefit. It might just be walking and just getting more in tune with your body, but I don't know if you have anything else to add on that.
Well, I can go, you know, I can say, you know, there's walking, there's also sitting, which, you know, there were articles that came out a few years ago calling walking is the new smoking, as far as it being dangerous and for our health, and people do it too much. But you can sit, but if you're, my class that I used to teach was called Sit Fit or active sitting. If you can learn to sit and move through the core, everything gets kind of exercised, even though you're sitting. So that definitely is a benefit of learning this this method, to exercise while you're sitting. I can do stuff now while I'm talking to you. I can be exercising my core as I'm talking to you.
Right, because I know I shouldn't do it, but like many people do, or I guess mostly women, we cross our legs while sitting. I know it's not good, but it's just like I don't even pay attention. My legs are crossed, and I know it kind of maybe gets your whole
limits your one thing that people do, you can't see me doing it right now, but a lot of times people put their feet underneath the chair, so they're up on their toes with their feet back, and then your hip movement is gone. I often encourage people just put your feet under your knees, sit flat, don't lean back in your chair. This is called free sitting as opposed to supported sitting.
So it sounds like all the primary benefits of core movement integration applies to anybody, everyone that is walking, sitting, and doing any sort of activities, and so possibly sports, maybe athlete, if you can expand on that part.
Yes. And as I said earlier, one of the primary requirements for studying core movement integration is to be curious about how you do what you do. If you're not interested in how you do what you do, then it doesn't work. As far as athletes or athletics, so if I'm working with somebody who's a dancer and they're having a problem with their right ankle, for instance, as a massage therapist, I can go in there and I can, cross fiber, certain elements of that, and maybe do some myofascial release on that area in the calf muscles and whatnot. And that all can be very helpful. But to get to the core of that movement, generally, you're going to go to the hip, because the hip is the great driver of everything. It's the connector for the lower body and upper body, but it's also like all movements of the leg are driven by the hip and by the hip movements, including the knee and the ankle.
It cascades down and cascades up.
Yeah, and mostly, like you can trace things to the core of the body or the spine or somewhere in the pelvic area. Generally, that's and that includes movements of the shoulder, movements of the head. They're all tied to that pelvic floor and the hips. That's where it all happens. So for an athlete who begins to for them, sometimes they do big movements, macro movements, we're going to smack a golf ball, for instance. But if you want to slowly break it down, and slow and small movements is the key, you can begin to feel the chain, of movement and become more efficient in that movement. And then that's going to give you more power, more accuracy. So when I'm working with somebody, we might do a movement lesson in which I don't really demonstrate anything. I just kind of talk them through it, whether they be lying on their back or lying on their side or standing up or sitting. I can direct movement there, but then I can also come in and do some hands-on, just to kind of show, get the person to feel that connection. Can you feel, that when you press into your right foot, that you're your right hip goes back, or you push into your right foot and your left hip goes back. Can you feel that? And then can you feel under the ribs here that this is moving up, and that the shoulder, there's a connection. You can put your hands on, or I could put my hands on and take the ribs a little bit further and just not pull anything, but just get that connection to move through the body. So for athletes, it can be very helpful. I'm excited to work with this golfer. I hope that we can improve things for her.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I know you showed it to me, but it is true that feeling it seems or would be, I think, the most helpful, because we can start trying to on ourselves, but I think really getting I don't remember how you said earlier, but really getting the hang of it, or really getting the
It's embodied. You can embody.
Yeah, right. Because it's really not, I mean, like you said, it's simple, but it's not easy to get it right to start, or at least for me.
I had one fellow some years back. He was a fellow Aikido practitioner who had a lot of foot and ankle problems. Were really preventing him from continuing on. And in general, even with his work, he was having a lot of trouble. And so I had him lying on his back and with his knees up, and it was just a general, a simple movement of moving the knee forward, but directing it from the hip. The general tendency for most people is they go for the lower abdomen, they engage the muscles of the lower abdomen, and they thrust that hip forward or pull it up toward, towards the ceiling, when it can be a very, very simple movement of just turning, and that this fella actually, it changed his whole way. He actually started crying on the table because he couldn't believe that for all these years he'd been moving this way, and then this simple little thing just changed it for him, and he became, he came to see me a lot after that, because there's so much more to it. There's always more. So it's kind of fun.
Yes. So I guess really, core movement integration, it is for everybody that may have the curiosity to improve their body movement, and any daily activity, movement, and really for people involved in sports or athletes.
Yes, for anybody who has a body.
Anybody who has a body.